A lot of people that are joining this today are probably thinking, you know, where do I even begin? So I know you come to us with a lot of knowledge on IVR transformation, both in terms of experience, but also just how you're thinking about it because you've seen it in action. What's one non-traditional metric, right? So not hold times or CSAT, but like a different type of metrics that really you felt was the catalyst of convincing leadership that now is the time. We need to prioritize IVR transformation, even though it is a insanely huge lift over competing projects, and here's why. Like, walk us through that conversation.
Yeah, so we talked about the evolution first, right? So it's much more common. It's much it's becoming expected. Um, but really, where the value is beyond an IVR, where it's a really kind of simple, very very specific data point driven sort of answer type of thing. When you start getting to conversational AI, you're opening up a lot more flexibility, right? So to be able and it does come down to be able to what are the types of questions and answers that you're able to offer and potentially if you want to call it deflect or intercept or just handle with a digital human, call it what you be, but it is, everybody is struggling doing more with less, and when you start talking about metrics like cost per contact, or it's actually even better, cost per customer is actually probably a better metric here, whether it be cost per customer or order to customer ratios, or order to contact ratios and those kind of things. What you're looking to do there is expand that as much as possible. In the healthcare space, we were really looking at contacts to members. That was like the golden metric, right? Like, looking at how can you reduce that percentage of members touching a human contact, was the golden scale metric. And the more you could lower that, the more you can have people working on more difficult or areas that need more empathy or more personal touch, and without over expanding, blowing your gross margin, blowing your personal budgets. It's really all about that kind of core variable of cost per whatever, right? And trying to reduce that one. That is the essentially doing more with less, and be able to do it at the same time of either maintaining or improving your CSAT or MPS scores, what have you. That's really that's the super silver bullet that we're all looking for.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, my next question was kind of like, what's the most compelling future state vision? But I think you answered that. And so it sounds like almost like the first step in even just dipping your toe in the water here is just mapping out maybe what your customer journey is and talking about what it looks like and what it could look like. And if you move one thing over here and AI here, what does that then mean for some of your key metrics, whether it's CSAT, contact per customer, those sorts of things. So it's kind of helping everybody visualize those piece by piece. Is that a fair
Yeah,
assessment?
you hit on a bunch of really important points there. So I do want to
Yeah.
dive into that. We talked about the silver bullet a second ago, but the golden rule is to know your customer, right? Based on different industries, you can have different customers, different customer needs, how they want certain information. Retail, you might be able to do more, status info, status updates, and things like that on, where's my order or returns. Healthcare, you're probably going to want to get certain things to a person because they're going to be more difficult and more empathetic. You need the empathy there and such, right? So there's a wide range, and there's also the demographic, or don't always love the term persona, but the persona of your customer. Are they highly digital? Are they laggards? Do they need a phone? Are they still using the landline, right? Or is it all, cell phone based and what have you? So first, know your customer. But I do think in this space, with the conversational AI, you mentioned it first. it's not about jumping into the AI pool, head first. I don't think. Um, there are times where it does make sense. You're a startup or you're a young company. You're rebuilding. If you're rebuilding, going from an on-prem system to a CCaaS system, yeah, this might be the time to do it now too, like a full, changeover. But for the most part, it's about taking some really specific use cases. I would start with what I would consider low risk, and if you could do low risk and high impact, that's the best, right? Um, in the retail space, it might be status updates. In healthcare, we were talking about, it might be your provider or your doctors and things like that, where you're pretty much just providing very kind of cut dry, basic information, with always the option to be able to speak to a person, right? So that's always, as we do this, let's keep that in mind as much as possible. But it's about, every contact center has, lists and lists of call types or skills or what have you, right? As you go through those and you go through the dispositions or reasons for people calling, there's bound to be some that come up a lot, but are also probably relatively simple, right? It could be logging in. It could be, like I said, checking the status of a return, or where the status of my order is, or a very simple explanation of benefits, right? So start with those first, and you don't need a complete, this isn't, by doing that, hook it into your telephony system and just focus on that, sort of singular one, show the benefits of it, and then just start expanding. At some point, you will probably hit a critical mass where it makes sense of, like, let's take a step back and look at our entire customer journey. And it's gonna sound crazy, but you can actually really, really simplify things by doing this.